It was the night before Christmas in the world of Minecraft, and everything was peaceful in the little village of Snowhaven. Snowflakes gently fell from the sky, covering the land in a soft white blanket, and the villagers were busy decorating their homes with festive lights and colorful wool ornaments. Steve, Alex, and their trusty pet wolf, Snowy, were sitting by the fireplace in their cozy cabin, sipping hot cocoa and enjoying the warmth after a long day of gathering supplies for the holiday feast. Outside, the village was bustling with excitement. The villagers were putting the final touches on a giant Christmas tree in the center of the town square, its branches adorned with glowing redstone lamps and blocks of emerald and gold. The tree was topped with a shining beacon that lit up the entire village. "Tomorrow is going to be the best Christmas ever," Steve said, smiling as he placed another log on the fire. Alex nodded in agreement. "I can't wait for the feast and to exchange gifts with everyone. We've worked hard all year, and now it's time to celebrate." Snowy wagged his tail and barked happily, as if agreeing with them. But as they sat in their warm cabin, something strange was happening just beyond the snowy hills that surrounded Snowhaven. Deep in the dark forest, a cold wind began to blow, and the temperature dropped sharply. The once gentle snowfall turned into a blizzard, and the trees creaked under the weight of the ice that began to form on their branches. In the center of the forest, a figure appeared, a tall, shadowy figure wearing a dark cloak, his eyes glowing faintly under his hood. This was Frostfall, the spirit of winter, and though he once brought joy and beauty to the snowy biomes of Minecraft, something had changed. Over the years, his heart had grown cold, and he had forgotten the warmth of the holidays. Now, he wandered the world, leaving only freezing winds and icy shadows in his wake. As Frostfall stood in the heart of the forest, he raised his arms, and a powerful gust of wind swept through the trees, carrying with it a deep, bone-chilling cold. The snowstorm intensified, and soon the entire forest was covered in ice. But Frostfall wasn't finished yet. He had set his sights on Snowhaven. Back in the village, Steve, Alex, and Snowy were preparing for bed when they heard a loud knock on the door. Steve opened it to find villager 42, one of the village elders, standing in the snow, looking worried. "Steve, Alex, something terrible is happening," the villager exclaimed, his voice trembling. "The forest to the north has been overtaken by a strange blizzard, and it's heading toward the village. We've never seen anything like it." Steve and Alex exchanged a concerned glance. "It must be Frostfall," Alex said. "I've heard stories about him. He's the spirit of winter, but he's become bitter and cold-hearted over the years. If he's responsible for this blizzard, we need to stop him before Snowhaven is buried in snow and ice." Villager M42 nodded. "The other villagers are preparing for the storm, but we don't know how to fight this kind of magic." Steve grabbed his diamond sword from the chest by the door, and Alex strapped on her enchanted armor. "We'll head into the forest and see if we can stop the blizzard at its source," Steve said, his voice steady. Snowy barked, ready to join them on their quest. With their plan in place, Steve, Alex, and Snowy set out into the night, the snow crunching beneath their boots as they made their way through the village and toward the dark forest to the north. The closer they got to the forest, the worse the storm became. The wind howled, and the snow whipped around them, making it difficult to see. As they entered the forest, they noticed that the trees were completely covered in ice, their branches weighed down by the heavy frost. The air was so cold that their breath turned to mist the moment it left their mouths, and even Snowy, with his thick fur, shivered from the cold. "We have to keep moving," Steve said, his voice muffled by the scarf he had wrapped around his face. "If Frostfall is behind this, we need to find him and figure out how to stop this storm." They pressed on, their footsteps barely audible over the howling wind. After what felt like hours of trudging through the snow, they finally reached the center of the forest. There, standing in a clearing, was Frostfall himself. His cloak billowed in the wind, and his glowing eyes stared coldly at them from beneath his hood. "So, you've come to stop me," Frostfall said, his voice echoing through the clearing like the wind itself. "Foolish mortals, you cannot stand against the power of winter." "We're not afraid of you," Alex said, stepping forward with her sword in hand. "We know what you've done, but this doesn't have to be the way." you can still bring joy and beauty to the winter season instead of this endless cold. Frostfall's eyes narrowed. Joy? Beauty? Those things are meaningless in a world of ice and snow. The only thing that matters is power, and I control the winter. Steve tightened his grip on his sword. We won't let you bury Snowhaven under your storm. We'll fight if we have to. Frostfall raised his hand, and a gust of icy wind swept through the clearing, knocking Steve and Alex back. Snowy growled, standing protectively in front of them. But before Frostfall could attack again, a soft, glowing light appeared in the trees behind him. The light grew brighter, and soon a figure stepped into the clearing. It was the spirit of Christmas, a kind and gentle being who brought warmth and light to the world during the holiday season. She wore a flowing red robe trimmed with white fur, and her golden hair shimmered in the light of the glowing star she held in her hand. Frostfall, the spirit of Christmas said, her voice soft but filled with power. You've forgotten the true meaning of winter. Frostfall turned to face her, his expression unreadable. The meaning of winter is cold and ice, he said. It's the season of darkness. No, the spirit of Christmas said, stepping forward. Winter is a time of rest, yes, but it's also a time for coming together, for sharing warmth and light with those we care about. The cold doesn't have to be cruel. It can be beautiful, a reminder of the quiet peace that comes before the renewal of spring. Frostfall's eyes flickered, and for a moment, the storm around them seemed to lessen. I once believed that, Frostfall said, his voice quieter now. But over the years, I watched as the world moved on without me. The joy of the holidays was forgotten, and I was left with nothing but the cold. The joy of the holidays has never been forgotten, the spirit of Christmas said gently. It lives on in the hearts of those who celebrate, in the warmth of a fire on a cold night, in the laughter of friends and family gathered together. You've just lost sight of it. Frostfall was silent for a long moment, his glowing eyes dimming slightly. The storm around them had almost stopped now, the wind no longer howling, and the snow falling gently once more. I don't know how to find that joy again, Frostfall admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The spirit of Christmas smiled warmly. You don't have to find it alone, she said. The spirit of the holidays is something we share with others. Come with me, Frostfall. Let's bring light and joy back to the winter together. Frostfall hesitated, but then slowly he lowered his hand. The storm that had raged through the forest finally came to a stop, and the trees, once covered in ice, began to thaw. The cold wind faded, replaced by a soft, peaceful silence. I will try, Frostfall said, his voice filled with uncertainty, but also a glimmer of hope. The spirit of Christmas reached out and took Frostfall's hand, and together they stepped forward, their glowing forms disappearing into the night. Steve, Alex, and Snowy stood in the clearing, watching as the storm finally ended. The stars above them twinkled brightly in the now clear sky, and the forest around them was peaceful once more. We did it, Alex said, her voice filled with relief. We stopped the storm. Steve nodded, sheathing his sword. And I think Frostfall found his way back to the spirit of the holidays. Snowy barked happily, wagging his tail as if to agree. As they made their way back to Snowhaven, the village was just as they had left it, blanketed in snow, but now peaceful and calm. The villagers were lighting lanterns in the square, preparing for the Christmas feast, and the giant Christmas tree in the center of the town square sparkled with lights. When Steve, Alex, and Snowy returned to their cabin, they found a surprise waiting for them. Sitting on the table by the fireplace was a small, glowing snowflake, Frostfall's gift to them, then a symbol of the peace and joy he had rediscovered. As they sat by the fire, sipping hot cocoa once more, Steve smiled. This is going to be the best Christmas ever. Alex nodded, her eyes on the glowing snowflake. Merry Christmas, Steve. Merry Christmas, Alex, Steve replied. And with that, they settled in for a peaceful Christmas Eve, the warmth of the fire and the spirit of the holidays filling their hearts.